All right, Tom, so the key is questioning, but what types of questions do I ask? Well, let's start off with two broad areas of questions. We'll start with what we call the open questions and then the closed questions. Now, let's start with the open question. An open question is a question that requires thought on the part of the person you're asking. In other words, they have to think about the response. In other words, it opens their mind up by the type of question that you ask them. Now, many of you may have remembered in school that these were called the WWWWH questions, which meant the who, what, when, where, why, and how questions. See, when you ask a question with a who, a what, a when, or a where, they can't give you a quick answer. They have to, first of all, think about the answer. That's why we call this an open question. Now, these are really important to build into your presentation. For example, if I were in financial services, I'd use a where question. John and Mary, where do you see yourselves enjoying your retirement years when it's time for you to just not work anymore? Well, we'd like to move to, you see. Now they're going to talk about where they want to move, where they want to be in the future. Let's say I market a business machine and I am talking to the decision maker. John, how do you see this new machine impacting the profits to your company? You see, he can't give me a quick yes or no. He talks about how it will affect. It can be a when question. When do you see this fabulous new device increasing your company's effectiveness? I get him talking. So one of your goals in open questions is to realize, because they require thought and they increase the person's desire to talk to you, you want to build at least 2 or 3 of these into your presentation. I'd love, as part of your follow-up, for you to say, I'm going to take who, what, when, where, why, and how, and write at least 2 or 3 that I build in to my presentation. Excellent types of questions. Now, your next type of question is called the closed question. And the definition of a closed question is a question that is aimed to get a definite answer, normally just a yes or a no. That's why it's kind of like saying they don't need to open their minds up, because oftentimes this question they can answer without thinking. Now, my favorite of all the closed questions is the tie down. Now, let me define it. It's a question at the end of a sentence that demands a yes answer. Now, I've used a couple in the program, haven't I? In fact, that was one, wasn't it? I did it again, didn't I? You're catching on, aren't you? They're kind of fun, aren't they? See, this is the process of taking isn't it, doesn't it, wasn't it, couldn't it, wouldn't it, shouldn't it, can't you, won't you, haven't you, hasn't he, hasn't she, and nicely putting them on the end of a sentence with a nice little nod. Now, let me show you an example of this for your business. I want to ask my decision makers some questions. I might want to say something like, John, when I looked at my company, I chose it because of its professionalism. And I'm sure you'll agree that professionalism in business today is important, isn't it? Now, you see, I plant in his mind professionalism and then ask for his agreement, and now I have a little yes that we both agree in the importance of professionalism. Let's say I'm marketing a financial services product, and there's different ones they could choose from. I might want to say, you know, John and Mary, investing in a quality program so you have the assets you need in your golden years just makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And I have the little nod with doesn't it, and I've gotten an agreement. Now, you don't want to overuse the tie down. And the reason you don't want to overuse it is what I said in the definition. It demands a yes, and if you use more than 1 or 2 with that decision maker, now it's becoming kind of pushy, isn't it? And you don't want that, do you? So take 1 or 2 and say, okay, now I'm going to write 1 or 2 of these into my presentation. Now, there's another type of tie down. We call it the inverted tie down. Now, it's defined as putting the tie down on the front for more warmth, and that suggests a yes. Now, remember, we did a reputation for professionalism is important, isn't it? Well, now we just reverse it by saying, John, in business today, isn't a reputation for professionalism important? Now, let me do a regular, and all of you, I want you and all my folks here, you invert them. Ready? A reputation for professionalism is important, isn't it? Let me hear you invert that sentence. Isn't a reputation for professionalism important? That was one, wasn't it? Let me hear it. Wasn't that one? We did it again, didn't we? Didn't we do it again? You're catching on, aren't you? Aren't you catching on? Now, this is again, the regular was on the back demanding a yes, the inverted's on the front suggesting a yes. Very important you work on those. Now, our next little question is called the tag on tie down. Tag on tie down. This is basically when your client, the decision maker at the table or desk in front of you, says a positive statement, they don't tie it down, so you do. So all of a sudden, let's say that I have a woman decision maker here regarding my new electronic processing we're going to be talking about, and she says, Tom, it makes a lot of sense. Well, if I'm going to tag on, what would I say and nod? Doesn't it, Mary? And now I've taken her statement and tied it down for her. That's the tag on tie down. It makes a lot of sense. And then I would say, doesn't it? I think professionalism is very important today, Tom. What will I say? Isn't it, Mary? And I've tagged on her positive statement with my tie down, again, getting a minor agreement. Now, your next questions are fun. They're called alternate advance or alternate choice questions. Now, look at the definition. It's a question with two answers. Either answer is a minor agreement leading towards the major decision. Now, these can be used in many instances. The time we meet a person, that's one of the best. Where are you going to meet the person? Who all's going to be at the meeting? See, it could be the type of investment they're going to make. It could be the starting date for ownership. That's when we use an alternate of choice. For example, try not to say, like a lot of us have always said, when can we get together? Well, now you're letting them choose a time, and oftentimes they'll say we're too busy and stall you. So work on saying, John, which would be best for you? Getting together today or would tomorrow be better? Or, John and Mary, I can rearrange my schedule to visit with you tonight, or would tomorrow night be more convenient? Or, John, I'm rather flexible. I could pop by this morning, or would you rather I wait till this afternoon? See, that's the alternative choice. It's great for using it to start up time. John, Mary, what date would you like to take possession? We could do it on the 1st or the 15th. Which did you prefer? Now they can't say yes or no. Take the 1st, take the 15th. Wonderful, wonderful questions. It could be as simple as saying, would you like to make it a 5 or a 10% deposit? See, we don't ask how much they'd like to give us. We give them two amounts of money. Wonderful technique. Also, it's great for where you want to meet them. You might want to give them this alternate. I could come by your home, or would you rather stop by our facility? Now they can't say yes or no. Go to the home, come to our office. Wonderful questions. So it can be money amounts, can be locations, can be startup dates. You just want to make sure you build the alternative choice into your questioning process. My kids knew all of these before they were 10 years of age. I vividly remember my daughter, Tasha, about 8. We walk in a store. Now, most kids, they walk in a store, they say what? Dad, can I have an ice cream? Not my kids. Dad, which did you prefer I have today? A fudgesicle or a popsicle? Either way, what she got? Ice cream. That's called calling for the decision. So use these not only in business, but have fun with them around your family, your friends. Our next question has a really funny name to it. I labeled it the porcupine. When I first learned the technique, I kept forgetting to use it. See, the actual technique is defined as answering the right question with a question and then writing the answer on your paperwork. Well, see, what would happen to me is I'd get out there and I'd get nervous and I'd forget to actually do it. So I thought, I'm not going to forget this darn thing, so I'm going to pretend that whenever they ask me the right type of questions, I'm just going to say it's like they threw a porcupine in my lap. Now, picture, if you will, all of you seen a picture of a porcupine. It's prickly, it's ugly, it's usually crawling in the desert, it's dirty. None of you would snuggle it, cuddle it, if I threw it at you. Well, that's what we do with the porcupine question. We answer the question with a question, you see. For example, some questions are never asked unless that buyer really wants to go ahead. Suddenly, let's say you're showing a product, and the buyer goes, Tom, I'm very impressed. How soon could you get it here to us? Gang, they don't ask that question unless they want it. Well, don't say right away. Don't say next week. Just answer it with a question. John, what time schedule for delivery would best suit you? Gosh, we'd love it by Wednesday. Your presentation is done now. That one question says we want it. You now would move on to the form, the paperwork. Let me make a note of that. And you write down Wednesday, the date, and then begin filling out your form, okay? I love the porcupine. I remember showing homes, and a woman would walk into a home. And, of course, a lot of women looking at homes don't want to let you know they want the property. But all of a sudden, I'd watch her walk into the middle of a room, touch her face, and she would actually look at all the corners of the room. Well, I know what she's doing. She's looking how her furniture would fit in that room. And suddenly she would say, would they leave that fireplace screen? Well, I don't say yes. I don't say no. I pretend she threw the porcupine into my arms, and I smile and say, Mary, would you like me to see if they'll leave it for you? When she says yes, she just purchased a fireplace screen, but what must she keep with it? The house, of course. That's why the porcupine is such a fun, great little question. Your next question is titled the involvement question. Now, it's a question that the buyer, the client, must ask themselves after they get involved, after they've said yes. See, it mentally throws them into the future and assumes ownership. Now, let's just say hypothetically, I was marketing a copier, and all of a sudden the client stops me and says, you know what I'm really curious about is, will you come in here and have a training program with us, because we really feel our people would need to be taught some of the complexities of this type of copier. Well, see, I'm not going to say yes or no. They've involved themselves with that question, because, see, the training only comes after they've said yes to the copier. It might be also if I were, for example, showing a home, and suddenly the woman stopped and again looked around in the den, and all of a sudden I said to her, Mary, where would you put the couch in this room if the home makes sense? When she says against that wall next to the fireplace, I am involving her, moving her in.